Dear BalkanPod listeners, I'm Dilek from Turkey. Today we're gonna evaluate pulse election Albania. I need to remind you that on 25 April, Albania held election, and the result of election reinforces the position of Prime Minister Edi Rama, who won his third consecutive term, safeguarding the absolute majority in the parliament. On the other hand, opposition leader Lulzim Basha said that his party PD doesn't accept a defeat. The mess in politics still continued. The country is characterized by high levels of polarization. So we will examine all these developments in the country in detail with my guest Alba Çela from Albania. Ms. Çela is the executive director at the Albanian Institute for International Studies. Dear Alba, welcome to BalkanPod.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very happy to host you. Really, I hope we're gonna have a good talk here.
I'm looking forward.
Okay, let's start with my first question. We will talk about the Albanian election. So, as you know, Prime Minister Edi Rama is heading toward the third term in power according to the election results. So, Rama's main contender is Lulzim Basha of the PD, Democratic Party, lost the election. So, but increased its voice. How do you evaluate the results of Albanian election?
So, yes, a few weeks ago, on the 25th of April, we had the round of the general elections, and it was a calm day. And that was something positive because during the campaign there had been some tensions and incidents. But thankfully, the election day and the counting was calm and properly done. These elections were very important for Albania because we needed fair and free elections in order to progress with the European perspective and in order to be evaluated positively to start the accession negotiations. The Socialist Party managed to get a third governing mandate. This is the first time that this is happening because always after communism in Albania, the longest it has been for both parties to have 2 terms. So this is something very new to have a party which is even alone and not in a coalition to govern for the third mandate. We don't have a final evaluation report from the OSCE yet, but the preliminary reports seem like the outcome will be regular and accepted, though the opposition parties, they have a lot of allegations of irregularities and they are seeking a redoing of the process. However, there have been signals from them that they will not boycott the parliament, but they will sit and take their mandates, primarily because they have tried the strategy of boycott before and it has not been successful for them.
I see. Actually, I'm wondering this part of that election. And also you mentioned Lulzim Basha, the opposition leader, don't recognize the election result because of some allegation about, electoral offenses made by Socialist Party. However, he is now under pressure from members of his party and supporters to step down. What kinds of developments do you expect from the opposition side? Or this election can change anything in Albania?
So, yes, there is a small group within the Democratic Party that is seeking for Lulzim Basha to resign, but I don't believe that they represent a realistic threat to his leadership. It would have been different if the former leadership of the DP would have expressed this request or this disappointment. But as long as Lulzim Basha enjoys the support of the former leadership, he is safe at the leadership position of the DP. He has made those declarations that he doesn't recognize the outcome, but many elected MPs from the Democratic Party have already said that they will take their places in the parliament. So that would make a boycott very meaningless. Whether the elections will change anything for Albania, well, the political scene already, as I said, is different. It's the first time with the third mandate. The relationship between the majority and the president for the moment is very tensioned, and there is starting impeachment process for him, though this process also has very few chances to succeed because this parliament is valid only until the beginning of July and there needs to be a constitutional court involved as well. The biggest change that we are expecting here is how will the EU evaluate this process and whether this will be a positive signal for finally de facto opening the accession negotiations or not. But in this evaluation, there are many internal and external factors that need to be taken into account.
Actually, I will ask a question about the EU, but first of all, I would like to ask that, do you think that Edi Rama is very satisfied with this election result? What are you expecting from the winning party, the Socialist Party?
I believe that he is satisfied with the result because this result of 74 MPs plus 3 MPs that are in the Social Democratic Party, which already has expressed the desire to be involved or supporting Edi Rama. So it is a comfortable majority to rule alone and to proceed without major impediments. So the focus on the governance, or at least the way the SP has portrayed it during the campaign, is the management of what is already going on, the reconstruction program after the earthquake, and the pandemic's management through the vaccination campaign. These are sort of short-term objectives, but these are processes that require time. So this will be the key things that will go on, as said in the campaign, and as two strong winning points, let's say, for the Socialist Party.
I see. I would like to bring attention the changes made to the electoral code by the ruling party in October. What is this election reform issue? How did it affect the result of election?
So there were two moments for the electoral reform. The first one was negotiated heavily by the international community because without an agreement at that time, the opposition was outside of the parliament, so they were convened in an extra-institutional arrangement called the Political Council. So at that step, they agreed to change the electoral system, but later on, a bit more unilaterally in the parliament, further changes, constitutional changes were made. This did affect the outcome of the elections, of course, through, for example, I give you one example, because this time the voters had the opportunity to choose the party and the candidate. The positive side was that there was more choice, so it's good for democracy. But the negative side was that a lot of people were very confused, and the way they put their marks on the ballot paper made the ballot paper invalid. So now you have thousands, and in case of Tirana, tens of thousands of invalid ballot papers, and you can see that the people were confused, putting one number for the party, and then instead of checking the box in the right place, they select the number of the candidate in the wrong place, and this of course affected, and all the parties, they say that this affected only their vote, but it is obvious that this confusion was present in all parts of electorate.
You know, the political tensions are usually amplifying in Albania when President Ilir Meta accused Prime Minister Edi Rama and vice versa. I mean, Ilir Meta and Edi Rama are in political clash. So this causes the polarization in the country. So how can the country take serious decision about the future of the country in this kind of situation, let's say?
There are two kinds of polarization. So the first one, which is a bit more obvious, between those parts of electorate who support the Socialist Party and those who support Democratic Party. And here the differences are more substantial. They regard the past, they regard ideology. Whether the other kind of polarization that you mentioned, Ilir Meta has been in the past a high-ranking figure of the Socialist Party. And the party that he established after splitting from the Socialist Party is still considered to be part of the left spectrum. So it is a bit of a more internal polarization within the left camp. This kind of polarization is in the form of a cycle. It goes up and down. The decision of the Socialist Party to put Ilir Meta as a president, because let's not forget that he was elected with the majority vote of the SP in 2017, was also a mechanism to kind of manage him in the institution of the presidency, which is largely symbolic because Albania is a parliamentary republic. However, Mr. Meta, he is an experienced political actor, so it was not the right expectation for him just to sit down and be quiet in the corner of the presidency. Everybody expected him to be active, as he was. However, now during the elections, the situation was radicalized quite a lot. The president, first of all, participated actively in the campaign, which is is beyond the position that he has. He is supposed to be a unifying figure. And also he had quite some clashes with the international community, primarily kind of debate with the American ambassador through social media. And that was very much criticized by experts and by the public, because the United States is a strategic partner of Albania, and the sentiment in the people is very much pro-American.
In Albania, the European member countries make pressure about dialogue because they see that there is no dialogue channel in the country between the opposition and the government. So how you can evaluate this pressure coming from the European members? What is dialogue exactly in Albania? What it mean for Albania?
So I would use slightly different term, inclusion in reform making rather than dialogue. Especially in the last years, the big reforms that had to be passed in order to progress in the EU integration field, they required, both in terms of numbers, a majority beyond simple majority in the parliament, but also in terms of spirit, the inclusion of all political sides. So the objective of the international community was to make these reforms start and then be successful, especially the largest one is the justice reform. So dialogue for the last years has meant being included in these key reforms. In the past, it has been also connected to surpassing crisis. And I think here we have a dichotomy which is interesting to explore and to solve, because the international community gets involved with a lot of capital when there is a crisis, when there is an obstacle, and they provide a short-term solution by pressuring the sides to sit in a table. But what we actually need in the long term is a sustainable way for the political sides to find a way for themselves to sit in a table when it comes to big reforms that are for the national interest. The European integration is something that is undisputed in Albania. All the political forces, they are in favor of it. So there are the conditions in theory for them to find a way to sit down together when it comes to these reforms, but that has not happened yet.
So let's talk about the Albanian's EU future before closing the episode. You also shortly mentioned about the confusion in the European Union, but I would like to ask that how does the Europe see Albania as a partner in the region? What are you expecting from the accession process of Albania during the Edi Rama's new term?
So there are different evaluations here. When it comes to foreign policy, for example, the EU knows and has evaluated very positively Albania's foreign policy, which is 100% aligned with that of the EU and of the West. And Albania is usually a security exporter and a constructive partner in the region, which has not caused any headaches when it comes to foreign policy for the EU. When it comes to evaluating internal progress, then there have been some member states, important member states, including France and the Netherlands, which have been very skeptical about the progress of Albania in fields like rule of law, especially. So after passing the justice reform and having some track record of progress in this reform, although it's still ongoing, the expectation for Albania is to start the progress of the accession negotiations. This is a very important process. This is not entry into the EU as a full rights member. It's just the start of a long process for Albania to consolidate the reforms. And it needs to happen before people start being very disappointed with this lack of vision from the EU about the entire region. As you know, Albania is evaluated at the same time with North Macedonia, and you can see the disappointment there even bigger because they have, of course, had to make even bigger sacrifices.
Lastly, and additionally, I would like to ask about Turkey and Albania relations. How you can comment on this, like how you see the Turkey and Albanian relations, the leaders' relations?
Especially in these last 2 years with with the two crises that Albania faced, earthquake and pandemics, the relation between Albania and Turkey is very strong, is portrayed in a very positive light. Turkey providing substantial assistance for the reconstruction program, especially in the area of Lach, and then Turkey supplying Albania with the Sinovac vaccine through the Turkish distributor company, but also building a regional hospital. The relation between Rama and President Erdogan is very strong. It can be felt through the media coverage and through the entire attention given to it in Albania as well. And it is becoming a very strong point also in the narrative. I always tell this to people when it comes to Albania and Turkey. It's a very interesting interview that the Rama gave in the beginning of the pandemic when he said, I have plan A, I have plan B. And he said, dear citizens, please know this. Even if the world falls over, we will always have Turkey that has our back.
Thank you, dear Alba, for being here. I hope to see you soon. So I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. And I also wish you all the best with the podcast, which is very interesting.
Dear listeners, see you next week, same day and same time.